Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes.
Miss Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. Senator Kamala Harris. How are you?
I am very well. Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome back.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, sir.
Bernie Sanders.
Senator Bernie Sanders.
Senator Bernie Sanders.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm great. How you guys doing?
It's not the first time Bernie's been on the Breakfast Club. First time he's been to the studio.
That's right. Last time we were out in what? South Carolina?
Columbia, South Carolina. We went to go see him with Killer Mike. I hosted a town hall for him back in 2016 in Harlem as well, and he called in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now you're a 2020 presidential candidate.
I am.
Yes.
Why? Why did you do that to yourself? I'm happy you did, though, but why?
You know, here's the thing. For many reasons, including this. My mother raised us with many beliefs and rules, and one of them was don't just sit around complaining about something, do something about it. And over the course of the last 2 years, we have all seen so much that is wrong. We have seen American values under attack. We have seen the American dream under attack. We have seen babies being taken from their parents at the border in the name of border security when in fact it's a human rights abuse. We have seen an economy that is not working for working people. They passed this tax bill that is benefiting big corporations in the top 1%. And meanwhile, middle class America is trying to get through each month and pay the bills.
That's a fact.
They are denying climate change. I mean, it's extraordinary what's happening. All to benefit big corporations in the top 1%. And that is not reflective of what we need, much less who we are. And that's why I decided to run.
So Bernie, 44 out of 45 presidents in this country have been white men. Do you think we need another one?
Well, I think you need this one. Look, we are living in an unprecedented time. We have the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country, somebody who is a pathological liar, a fraud, a racist, a sexist, a homophobe,
A racist,
xenophobe,
a con man, a cheat.
Now you're just getting warmed up here, man. Now, this is a bad news guy. And the most important thing that has got to happen is that this dangerous president is defeated. I'm going to do everything I can to defeat him. I look forward to winning the Democratic nomination. And if I don't, I will support anybody else who's out there to defeat him. But this guy cannot win another term.
You were immediately attacked, it seems like. Like, immediately as soon as you announced it.
As soon as he announced, I mean, I was so excited.
Yeah.
I posted the when she came up here and we were talking to Howard and Hampton, and I was like, this is the only Howard University alum that I'm going to support.
He just wants to remind you that Hampton is the real HU. That's all.
It's not,
That's all.
you know.
It's not about that.
You
right?
know.
It's not about
You
that.
know.
But you were attacked so fast for being a prosecutor, and people were upset about it. You know, what do you say to some of those critics?
Well, first of all, look, I'm not going to ever apologize for saying that when a child is molested or a woman is raped or one human being kills another human being, that there should be serious consequence. I'm never going to apologize for that. I also believe strongly that the criminal justice system in America is deeply flawed and it must be reformed. And that's why I have dedicated myself to doing the work of, one, focusing on vulnerable populations and making sure they are safe, and equally focusing on what we need to do to reform the criminal justice system. And I'm going to tell you also, when we know a system needs to be reformed, when we know it's broken, there is certainly a role on the outside, but we also should not take ourselves out of the opportunity to be on the inside and have an impact there and be an ally to what we need to do around reform from the inside. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. As a prosecutor, when I first started, it was during the height of what was happening with the Crips and the Bloods, and mostly in L.A. And so California was passing all these gang enhancements. And I'll never forget sitting in my office where there were a bunch of folks that I worked with standing outside talking about how they were going to prove a gang enhancement, which would cause somebody to go to prison for a longer time. And they started talking about the way the person was dressed and the corner they were hanging out on and the music they were listening to. So I walked out of my office and I said, hey, so my cousins and my family, members of my family dress that way. I have family and friends who live in that neighborhood. And I've got, now I'm going to date myself. And I've got a tape of that music in my car right now.
You said cassette tape, you got a tape.
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right.
Right? But these are the days that when I created a reentry initiative, when I was the elected district attorney of San Francisco, focused on young men, getting them jobs and counseling, people would say to me, what are you doing? DAs would not know what reentry meant. They would literally ask me, what does the word mean? Two, people, Democrats and Republicans, would say to me, what are you doing? Your job is to put people in jail, not let them out of jail. And I'll give you another example of what it means to be inside the room. When I was DA, I cannot tell you the number of mothers, and in particular black mothers, who would come to the front window of my office and they would say to the receptionist, I want to talk to Kamala, and I don't want to talk to anybody else but Kamala. And I would go to the window and I'd bring them back to my office, and they would cry. And they would say, nobody is taking this case seriously. My son is dead. And they're not investigating it. They're not taking my complaint seriously. And no one is acknowledging my pain. So those are the experiences I had. Now, listen, did I get enough done? No. Did I want to do more? Absolutely. But, there are people who in this campaign for president are definitely going to try and hit us from the right and the left. Because they sense that we and our campaign may have strength.
Why run again? Why run again? Last
Well, I'll
time
tell you why.
ran. Go ahead.
I'll tell you why. We ran in 2016. As you guys know, we were here. And I'm proud of the campaign that we ran. If you think back, and I want you just to think back a few years ago, think about the issues that we ran on. We said that we cannot continue to have a minimum wage in this country of $7.25 an hour, starvation wage, that we're going to fight for a $15 an hour minimum wage. And I was told back then 4 years ago? Think about it. What was I told?
Yes, that was insane.
It was insane. It was crazy. Can't happen.
$15.
Well, since then, 5 states have already passed that. I was told that the United States has got to join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a right through a Medicare for All single-payer program. Once again, Bernie, you're crazy. Can't be done. Today, a strong majority of the American people understand that it is insane that we have 30 million people who have no health insurance, more who are underinsured, and that we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Okay? We're making progress on that. Got more than 100 co-sponsors in the House for Medicare for All. We'll have 15 or 16 in the Senate, making progress. I was told that it was crazy to talk about making public colleges and universities tuition free so that every kid in this country has the right to go to college regardless of his or her income. Well, ain't such a crazy idea now. Cities, states are beginning to move in that direction. So to answer your question, we made progress in 2016 in taking on all of the big money interest in this country, taking on Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies. We made progress. Obviously, we have a long, long way to go. And I want to complete the political revolution that we began.
What will you do? Does it bother you that it seems like so many people that are against, it's not so many people, but the people that I've seen are against look like you and look like me and look like Charlamagne, our own? I get what you're saying, but I think black people just have questions for people who may not know who exactly you are. So it's just basic questions. Like, so they say they want to know, what did you do to hurt black people as a prosecutor? Because you said you regret some things.
Well, what I regret is not having done enough. I regret not having done enough. If I had been there longer, if I had had more in terms of bandwidth, I would have done more around creating initiatives, for example, in the juvenile justice system. That was something that was always on my agenda to focus on. I didn't get to that. But I will say this, that I know also that the reentry initiatives that I created were a model. Well, back when I did it, folks weren't doing it. There were very few. And you can talk to a lot of elected black prosecutors today in cities around the country who will say that what I did gave them the inspiration or provided a model for what could be done by a prosecutor, having the power to make the decision instead of asking somebody for permission. And I'll also say this. Look at my record in terms of being in the United States Senate. It has been a record of, I am proposing that we reform America's bail system, the money bail system, and get rid of money bail. because I know that people are sitting in jail every day in America because they can't afford to pay the $20,000 to get out while they're waiting trial. Meanwhile, the same person who committed the same kind of crime gets out if they've got the money. That's a criminal justice issue. That's an economic justice issue. Let me tell you what I will do when I am elected president of the United States. I will put in place an attorney general who, instead of what's happening now, which is that they are shutting down pattern and practice investigations into police departments around this country that have a proven record of discrimination and racism, they're shutting those down. Those need to be reinvigorated. Consent decrees. My full intention would be to bring those back up, which is looking at how we need to monitor what is happening around proven racism and discrimination in the criminal justice system. So, there are some people who are just going to say that we don't want prosecutors. There shouldn't be prosecutors, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to convince them.
Yeah, and I think they think it's weird. Like for whatever reason, they think a black person should never lock up other black and brown people.
Yeah, but here's how I feel about that, Charlamagne. Are you saying that if a child is molested, if a woman is raped, if somebody is shot down and killed,
they should go to jail.
Well, that's right.
Absolutely.
And let's not buy into the myth that black folks don't want law enforcement. We do. We don't want excessive force. Mm-hmm. We don't want racial profiling. But certainly if somebody burglarizes my house, I'm going to call the police, as are most of us, and say, come get this, you know what.
Mm-hmm. They don't even got to go that far. If I see him sitting in the cul-de-sac too long, I'm calling.
911, what's the emergency?
Right. But all of that being said, there is no question that this system is deeply flawed, that there is systemic racism in the system. We have a problem with mass incarceration, in particular black and brown men. There is no question about all that. There is no question that no mother or father in America should have to sit down when their son turns 12 and start having the talk with that child about how he may be stopped, arrested, or killed because of the color of his skin. Mm-hmm. There is no question.
You're right. What will you do differently, though, this time? What will hopefully ensure that you get to that point?
Good point. I have been criticized. My 2016 campaign, remember that campaign? We started with 4 people. My wife Jane is here. She was one of them. 4 people around our kitchen table. And then the campaign grew and we took on the whole establishment. We ended up winning 22 states and 13 million votes. This time we're starting from a very different position. We were criticized for being too male. That was a correct criticism. Too white. That was a correct criticism. That is going to change. We'll have a much more diverse campaign. We've already announced our co-chairs. I think many of you know Nina Turner.
Yes. Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Love Nina Turner.
You should love Nina Turner. Nina Nina worked with me in 2016. We started an organization after the campaign. It's called Our Revolution. Mm-hmm. And the function of Our Revolution is to get people all over this country to stand up, to fight back, to run for office. Nina has, until just a few days ago, been the leader of Our Revolution. They have 600 chapters all over the country, all right? And they are getting young people to get involved in the political process. Ro Khanna, you may know. Ro is one of the outstanding members of the Congress. Carmen Yolene Cruz, the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, is one of our co-chairs. Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's. So we have a diverse group of co-chairs. We're going to be announcing. We have Faz Shakir, who is the first Muslim ever to be the campaign manager.
What about your press secretary? They said he's an illegal immigrant.
She's
an illegal immigrant.
She's protected under DACA right now.
Yeah, we'll have DACA people, but we'll announce some other people pretty soon. It's going to be a diverse campaign staff, and this is a promise. This is maybe my first campaign promise. You ready? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. When you look at Trump's cabinet, looks kind of white and kind of old, right?
Kind of.
Absolutely.
Kind of.
It's like a cabinet of mayonnaise.
Okay. Our cabinet will look like America in terms of women and men and racial diversity. That's the promise.
Have you thought about the game you're going to play with Donald Trump, because he plays a nasty game. You know, we've seen it with Barack Obama. We've seen it with Hillary Clinton. We've seen it with everybody. So have you started figuring out how you're going to play that game with him? Is it going to be a nasty? Is it nasty for nasty? Is it high road? Is it low road? Have you thought about that at all? Because he's going to go nasty. You know that.
He will. I agree with you. This is going to be a knockdown, drag out. You know, I mentor a lot of people, and I tell them, you know, the thing about breaking barriers. I gave the speech actually at Spelman and Morehouse's homecoming recently. And I said, you know, the thing about breaking barriers, I want everybody to be clear about that. You may think breaking barriers means you start on one side of the barrier and then you just end up on the other side of the barrier. No, that's not how it works. There's breaking involved. And when you break things, you get hurt. And sometimes you get cut and you may even bleed. It will be worth it. It will be worth it. And then these kids were looking at me, their eyes all open. I didn't mean to scare them. And I said, look, I don't mean to scare you, but I definitely mean to prepare you. To do what we're talking about is going to involve pain, and it will be worth it. And it is also going to involve a lot of fun and joy, because that's the way I intend to run this campaign. I intend this campaign to be about not only the standard of success being winning the election, but the standard of success also being lifting folks up, helping to organize folks, empowering folks along the way. And we're seeing that. And it didn't take my election to have that happen. We saw that even in 2018. Folks are taken to the streets. They're running for office. They're participating. People realized after 2016, we cannot just sit back and expect that the right thing might happen. If we do not participate, it will not happen.
At least he gave you props. He said you had a great rollout. The best rollout of all the candidates.
Yeah, well, he likes crowd size, and I had a big crowd.
Now, you know, Senator Sanders, a lot of people say you didn't really lose the Democratic nomination. It got stolen from you the first time around. Do you believe it got stolen from you?
Well, let's just say this. Let's just say that the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, was not overly sympathetic to our candidacy. Let's just say that they represented the establishment. We took on the establishment. Let's just say that before the first vote was cast in the 2016 primary election in a caucus in Iowa, my opponent, Secretary Clinton, had 500 superdelegates lined up before the first vote was cast. Okay? All right. Over the last couple of years, we've worked hard on some of those issues. There will no longer be superdelegates voting on the first ballot at the convention, which means that now delegates will actually represent the people in their states, and there will not be a lot of powerful insiders having undue influence.
So if the fight is fixed, because they look at you, they don't look at you as a real Democrat. So if the fight is fixed and they don't want you as the nominee, you think it could happen again in 2020? You think they will do that to you again?
I'll tell you, look, let's be clear. Last time in 2016, we took on the establishment. All right, you know, I had a handful of members of the House. I had no governors, no big city mayors, nothing. And we won 22 states, all right? This is where what I understand and the essence of what this campaign is about is not only winning the nomination. Let's say you win the nomination. Do you think you're going to have health care for all? What do you think the insurance companies are going to do? What do you think the drug companies are going to do? You know how much money they have?
Yeah.
They have unlimited sums of money because they make billions and billions of dollars in profit while people can't afford their medicine, while people can't afford to go to the doctor. You got Wall Street a few blocks away from here, right? You got 6 banks that own 54, that have assets equivalent to 54% of the GDP of the United States of America. 6 banks, all right? When we tell the wealthy and the powerful they're going to have to start paying their fair share of taxes, you may have read recently, companies like Amazon made $11 billion in profit. You know how much they paid in taxes?
0.
They get all
You
kinds of
got it,
tax
man.
breaks.
No, actually, they got a rebate.
Yeah, they got money back. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's crazy.
So how do you take these guys on? The only way you take them on is with a mass movement, grassroots movement. This is what the civil rights movement was about. It's what the labor movement was about. The women's movement was about. The gay movement was about. And I'm very proud. We've been in this campaign now for, 6 or 7 days. We got 1 million people signed up in every state in this country. We're prepared to stand up and fight back.
I hear everything you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but some people, it'll go over their head. So I want to address some of these memes.
Okay.
Because this is how I see the false information getting out. There's a meme that says Kamala Harris broke the state record for incarcerating black males.
Well, that's just not true.
You know what a meme is, correct, right?
Yes, I do.
Don't
Of
date
course
that. Come
I
on
do.
now. Don't date her like that. Come on now.
No, you know, he went to Hampton. He doesn't know that.
Cassette
He
tape.
doesn't know.
She said cassette.
You do mixtapes.
I was talking about that was how long ago it was.
I know.
That I've been in this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying the meme is bullshit.
I'm saying that, listen, there are going to be all kinds of allegations being made. And I invite, and I not only invite, I encourage folks to look at the real record.
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be people who they want to own and a certain territory in politics, and they are concerned that I understand the issues, and so they're going to try and hit below the belt. And the only thing I can ask is that voters and everyone be informed and educated. But listen, the bottom line, Charlamagne, is that my role in the work that I have done has always been about representing the people. Mm-hmm. And as a prosecutor, it was about what we need to do to correct the system. And I stand by that record.
Now, you mentioned all those things, but, the question is always how. It seems like politicians, they say what everybody wants to hear. Free tuition, lower taxes, legalizing marijuana. But what's the plan? How are we going to have?
I don't say
tuition?
lower taxes.
Oh, okay. Well, how are we going to have free tuition?
I'll tell you
how. Are we going to do, health care for all?
Good.
How are we going to implement those plans?
Excellent question. Fair enough. Right now, in terms of health care, we are spending almost twice as much per capita as any other major country on earth. Now, when you come and you visit me in Burlington, Vermont, if you go 50 miles north of where I live, you're in Quebec, Canada, okay? They guarantee in Canada health care. Do you know how much it costs? You got, God forbid, somebody comes down with cancer, right? You go through all the surgery, all the chemotherapy. Do you know how much you pay in Canada for all of that?
Free.
Yeah, free. That's right. Well, it's not free. It's paid for
right.
The same way we pay for public education.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
You don't come out with a nickel bill. I think that's the right thing to be.
I agree.
Okay. So you asked me how we pay for it. Right now, we are paying twice as much per capita for healthcare as they do in Canada, because they don't have a system which enables the drug companies and the insurance companies to make huge profits. Their system is simpler. There is not all kinds of waste and bureaucracy.
A lot of overcharging here.
A
lot of it.
Huge amount. So to answer your question in terms of healthcare, we're already paying for it. We're paying twice as much as the Canadians. So what the criticism of Bernie Sanders is, he's going to raise your taxes. Well, I may. That's right. But you know what I'm doing? I'm doing away with all of your private health insurance premiums. All right, I don't know how you guys work or where you get your health care from. Mm-hmm. Somebody is paying for it. Somebody's paying Blue Cross or United Health. All right, that's gone.
We're paying it for ourselves, yeah.
You're paying it for yourself. How much are you paying? If you're an average family of four in this country, you're paying $28,000 a year. And that cost is going to go up. So we can't afford the present system. That's why we're going to move to Medicare for all. That's how we're going to pay for it. You ask about public colleges and universities. Roughly speaking, it's about $900 billion over a 10-year period. That's a lot of money. Not quite as much as Trump gave in tax breaks to the top 1% and large private corporations. All right, so we're going to tax. We have a speculation tax on Wall Street that would in fact pay for that. So to answer your question, all right, it's a fair question. Right now, we have more wealth and income inequality than any major country on earth. Now, I know we don't talk about this very much as a media. Am I right?
Right.
You can turn on CBS today. Ain't going to be on the CBS. You got three people owning more wealth than the bottom half of America. 46% of all new income goes to the top 1%. Okay? That's the fact. So, yes, you said me about lower. I'm not going to promise I'm going to lower Wall Street's taxes. Quite the contrary. We are going to ask the billionaires and the wealthiest people in this country and the largest corporations to stop paying their fair share of taxes.
Yeah, another meme says, Kamala Harris is not African-American. Her parents were immigrants from India and Jamaica, and she was raised in Canada, not the United States. And it said, fact. Uh-huh. That's what the meme said.
So I was born in Oakland.
Yeah.
and raised in the United States, except for the years that I was in high school in Montreal, Canada. And look, this is the same thing they did to Barack.
Yes.
This is not new to us. And so I think that we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do what has been happening over the last 2 years, which is powerful voices trying to sow hate and division among us. Mm-hmm. And so we need to recognize when we're being played.
I'm glad you mentioned Barack, because a lot of black people question if Barack was black enough. I see them doing the same thing to you. So what do you say to the people questioning the legitimacy of your blackness?
I think they don't understand who black people are. Because if you walked on Hampton's campus or Howard's campus or Morehouse or Spelman or Fisk, you would have a much better appreciation for the diaspora, for the diversity, for the beauty in the diversity of who we are as Black people. So I'm not going to spend my time trying to educate people about who Black people are. Because right now, frankly, I'm focused on, for example, an initiative that I have. It's called the LIFT Act, that is about lifting folks out of poverty. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the fact that in the United States today, almost the majority of American families who are making under $100,000 a year as a family are a $400 unexpected emergency away from what could be disaster.
Wow.
Which is why I'm proposing that there be a $6,000 tax credit that they can collect at $500 a month, recognizing $500 a month makes all the difference between being able to get through that month without worrying, much less catastrophe. I'm focused on the fact that in the United States today, in 99% of the counties in America, if you are a minimum wage worker working full time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. Those are the things I'm focused on.
What about prison reform? Because we've seen the effects of mass incarceration and how that's affected us to this day and still continues to affect us. What do you think about prison reform, and what are we going to do about that?
We're going to do a lot about that. Okay? Give me a minute on this one, because this is a huge issue. Right now, we have to ask ourselves how it happens that as a nation, we have more people in jail than any other major country on earth. We've got 2 million people in jail. We spend $80 billion a year locking up fellow Americans, all right? So first thing, and we're already, as a result of a lot of good work by Black Lives Matter, ACLU, and others, there are now prosecutors and district attorneys who are being elected to office who are saying, my job is not to put more people in jail, it's to reduce the prison population, all right? We're making some progress in that. We have got to invest in children and our kids. We've got to invest in education rather than in more jails and incarceration. Los Angeles, they want to spend billions of dollars on more jails. Wrong. Let's make sure that our kids have jobs and education. Second of all, we have to end private prisons in America. People should not be making money by locking up fellow Americans. I'm proud that during my campaign in 2016, we talked about the insanity of having at federal level, marijuana at the same level, treated the same way as heroin, okay? So we talked about decriminalizing marijuana, legalizing marijuana, and that's beginning to happen around this country. So the goal is to make sure that also when people leave jail, they have jobs, they have decent housing, so they don't come back to jail. But criminal justice reform is a huge issue for me.
Do you feel like you would be righting a wrong because you did sign the 94 crime bill?
I signed it. I voted for it.
You voted for it?
Yeah.
We voted for the 94 crime bill, which started a lot of this mass incarceration.
I voted for that because for a couple of reasons. I mean, one of the things, it's a fair question, but as you know, a lot of bills have a lot of stuff in it. And if I hadn't voted for that, you would be saying to me, how come you voted against the Violence Against Women Act? How come you voted against the effort to deal with some gun safety legislation, which was included in that? That was a ban, as I recall, on banning assault weapons, something that I believed in. So it was, but if you also noticed, at exactly that period, I talked about the dangers of mass incarceration. So it was one of those, and it happens. It may happen tomorrow. You got a bill which has some bad stuff in it, has some good stuff. You make your choice.
So you feel like you'd be righting a wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, this is an issue we've got to deal with. Too many lives are being destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of people get criminal records. You know why? Because they have smoked marijuana. They got caught with marijuana. That's insane. And as you know, this is a racial issue in the sense that if I think blacks and whites do marijuana at about equal time, blacks get arrested a hell of a lot more. And what we also want to do, and some communities are beginning to do this, is expunge the records of people who are arrested for marijuana. I believe in that very strongly.
How can we turn that around? I do a lot with real estate, and I notice a lot of black people can't afford. They can't get a loan. It's very difficult. It's almost impossible to get a small business loan. How can we help black people and minorities get more loans and get housing and not have to rent apartments for 40 years
That's right.
and actually own something?
That's right. Well, so for example, on the rent piece, but I'll go back to the piece about the families making less than $100,000 a year. My proposal is about reforming the tax code of this country. And by doing that, we know that we will lift 60% of black households out of poverty with this initiative. When you look at the issue of rent, what I am proposing is that we also recognize that if people are paying over 30% of their income in rent plus utilities, they should get a tax credit. Because to your very point, folks are struggling to pay the rent or pay the mortgage and are barely holding on. And what we know in particular for black families is that the greatest source of our economic stability or wealth and the greatest asset we have financially is our home. And we take a great deal of pride in that because we are about the American dream, right? And part of the American dream is you work hard, you play by the rules. You should be able to afford a home that will be your peace and where you will tend to that lawn and it will be your pride and it will represent your ability to put your children through college or retire with dignity. And too many people don't have access to that. So specifically then, when I'm elected president, part of it will be what we need to do around the housing and urban development, HUD.
I love how you spoke that into fruition too. So claim
Absolutely.
it. When I'm elected president.
Damn
I
right.
intend on winning.
Absolutely.
I just want to be really clear about that. And I know it will not be easy. And I know there's going to be a lot thrown in our way, and this will not be given to us.
Absolutely.
But on HUD, so part of what we have gotten away from is understanding that folks, again, need a lift up, right? And it's not a handout. It's just giving folks a hand.
Right.
And so that's about what we do, not only about credits in terms of, Section 8 housing and all that, but what we do to create incentives for home ownership. And that's something that's very much a part of my agenda.
And I see you talk the other day about your tax returns. Why are people so into your tax returns, and why haven't you released it? I know you said your wife does your taxes and she hasn't necessarily got to it yet. First of all, haven't you released it yet? And why are people so into your tax returns?
That's a good question, because it's a gotcha kind of question. We will release them. I mean, the answer is they will be, we're a normal family, and I'm a senator, but, in 10 years, somebody said to you, can you tomorrow get your 10 years of tax returns? Not so easy. So we're doing it, and it will come out very soon. And it will not be any great shocks. I don't have any investments in Russia. There is not a Sanders Tower in Moscow that we're working on. Nothing in Saudi Arabia. It'll be mostly a Senate salary. And I wrote a book, made some money on the book. You'll see that there.
But I mean, that's why you can't drag your feet on it, because that's what they gave Trump flack for.
Yeah, but believe me, we ain't Trump and we'll be out there.
Now, also, I wanted to ask, with Barack Obama, when he was in office, a lot of African-American people felt like he didn't do anything for black people. They felt like he did everything for, the LGBT community. He did things for, Spanish community, Latinos, but nothing for African Americans.
Yeah, so do you have an agenda for black voters?
Of course I do, but I also want to stand up for Barack Obama on that because, first of all, none of us can do enough, and we all know that. If you are a parent raising a child, we can never do enough.
Right.
As leaders, we can never do enough. It's important to acknowledge that. But let's also give people credit for what they've accomplished. I was just meeting yesterday and the day before with the presidents and chancellors of HBCUs. And we were talking about how under the Obama administration, for example, they extended Pell Grants, right? Which our kids really rely on to get them through school.
Right.
And extended it so it wouldn't just be for the school year, but through the summer. We can talk about what under President Obama happened in the Holder Justice Department around getting rid of the mandatory minimums, and in particular the crack and powder cocaine disparities, and also those investigations, pattern and practice investigations, so much. So, and a continuation of that would be part of my agenda. The black agenda has to include HBCUs and looking at the historical fact that when the federal government gives attention to HBCUs, we end up having a profound impact on black people in America. I think the numbers are something like almost 60% of black professionals in America have come from HBCUs, either in undergrad or graduate school. So that is part of it. Part of it is what I was describing about focusing on families that are making less than $100,000 a year. Part of it is focusing on what we need to do around reform of the criminal justice system, understanding that the mass incarceration policies of this country have led to black and brown men in particular being incarcerated at ridiculous rates, proportionate to their representation and proportionate to the fact that when you look at similarly situated other people, they're not getting arrested and prosecuted and sentenced to the same kind of numbers. There's what we need to do around also dealing with public health matters. One of my initiatives in a bill I have is around maternal mortality. Black women are dying at 3 to 4 times a higher rate in connection with childbirth in America. And it's tragic because when you look at it, this is not an issue of the educational level of these women. It's not an issue of their socioeconomic situation. Right? Look at Serena. Look what happened. It literally is about racial bias in the healthcare delivery system. And so I have an initiative that is, and it's a bill that says that, one, we need to train medical schools and doctors on how to take black women seriously when they walk through that hospital door and talk about their illness and take them seriously and not reject their complaints or think of them as hysterical. So there is that.
I experienced that last year with my wife when she had our third daughter, because it's like we went to the hospital. They had no epidurals.
Yeah.
Like she had to give a natural childbirth, didn't want to, lost a lot of blood.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, why? Like you knew we were coming. Right. It was just like, it was almost like oh, well, we don't have any epidurals. You want to push it out, push it out. Like,
wow.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
What hospital was that?
I don't want to say that.
But and you know people, and you're not. Right,
I got a little change.
And you're right.
Yeah.
Right. So there, so the issues that range, that exist, that need to be addressed and prioritized include everything from education to the healthcare system to the criminal justice system to the economy. And I will also say this, that people need to understand that when we talk about the agenda for Black America, that is about America's agenda. It needs to be about America's agenda. I'll tell you, it's been interesting. I actually gave a speech at Netroots Nation a few months ago on the issue of identity politics. Because I've been disturbed by how people are using this phrase, identity politics, because they use it in a way that is to basically have you shut up when you're talking about issues of race or gender or sexual orientation. Right? Oh, that's identity politics, right? You're playing that card. And here's my point. Let's not be shut up when we're talking about civil rights issues. Because the way that we handle and address those issues is a statement about who we are as Americans and our identity as Americans. The way we treat Black people in America is an indication of America's identity, right? So let's be clear about that, one. Two, and this is what I find to be very interesting as well. I am on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I'm on Senate Homeland Security Committee. So we've been studying the fact, some might want to debate it, including 45, we will not. Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States.
Right.
So if you look at the public reporting that has come out of the intelligence community, you will see that the Russians basically, they played around with certain things to see what would catch fire, what would create conflict, what would get people off their game in a way that would disrupt our democracy and people's confidence in our democracy. Number one issue, race. So here's the other thing I say to folks. Well, if you didn't otherwise care about race as an issue in America that needs to be dealt with, if you otherwise want to say, oh, it's their issue or it's just a civil rights issue, guess what? The Russians have made very clear, if we weren't before, that the issue of race is America's Achilles heel. And it has now become an issue that is not only about civil rights, but also an issue that is about national security. How about that? How about that?
Yeah. I think when it comes to, Black people in America, Democrats, for whatever reason, when you ask them, you're the first person to say, hey, do you have an agenda for Black people to actually lay something out? Usually we get that whole rising tide lifts all boats. We're all Americans' rhetoric, and I think black people just want to hear specific things for them. And I always wonder, why are people afraid to say what they would specifically do for black people?
I don't know, but I think that we have to speak truth. And when we speak truth, it is based on fact, and the way that you know fact is you inform yourself and educate yourself. Mm-hmm. And on this subject, it's about recognizing that there are huge disparities in this country based on race.
Absolutely.
And they cannot be denied, and they must be addressed. We can't talk, look, here's the thing, and I'll also set this point. I'm not mad at anybody for playing by the rules, working hard, and achieving success. I applaud that. I also know that in America today, and probably for a long time, if not forever, not everyone has equal access to an opportunity to achieve success. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about recognizing the inequalities, the inequities, it's not about saying I'm trying to take from those who have achieved success if they've played by the rules and worked hard. Good for you, keep it. But I am saying we need to be honest and address that not everyone has an equal opportunity
Absolutely.
to access to success, and we've got to address that. And then that's going to be about everything that we have discussed, from the education system to access to affordable housing, to having a job that gives you a living wage, because nobody in America should have to work more than one job to be able to pay their bills. So we could go on.
Now, does Bernie Sanders, this is a question that we've been asking of all Democrats, does Bernie Sanders have an agenda for black people?
Absolutely.
What is it?
All right. Look, we start off, as I mentioned, with massive disparity in the general population. Mm-hmm. Very few have a lot. Most people have nothing. Then you got another form of disparity, which is a wealth disparity. All right. So right now you have the white community, the average white family, owning 10 times more wealth than the average black family. You have a health disparity. Infant mortality rates in the black community, I think 2.5 times what they are in the white community. You got an education disparity. We talked about a criminal justice disparity, where African Americans are much more likely to be arrested and put in jail. Those are disparities that have got to be addressed. There is a friend of mine, Jim Clyburn of South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And Representative Clyburn came up with an idea, which I think we should build on. He called it 10-20-30, which says that you focus federal resources on those communities most in distress. And at the same time, you got to deal with institutional racism. I remember redlining, for example. Mm-hmm. If you're a small business person, I talked to a guy in Milwaukee last year, and he had, it seems to me, a moderately successful business. I said, Bernie, black guy, I'm going to the banks. I can't get a loan. So we got to deal with racism and discrimination within the financial services committee, within the financial services industry. You got payday lenders. My God. Unbelievable. You know what the interest rate and then ripping off on the most vulnerable and poorest people. So to answer your question, we do have an agenda. And it's an agenda that we will fight vigorously for.
Yeah, that's why I would like to see what you just said about the banks, I would like to see federal government put more support into the black banks.
Absolutely.
I feel like that could help black entrepreneurs.
And not only black banks.
Homeowners as well.
Mm-hmm. And black homeowners, but black business in this sense.
Correct.
In this sense. Unemployment now is, quote unquote, relatively low. But you go to African American communities and the youth unemployment rate is still unbelievably high. And you tell me, please tell me, what happens if you're a kid who drops out of high school who has no money?
You're probably going to turn into a life of crime.
You got it.
Yeah.
What a waste. What a waste. So, we got to invest in those things. We got to invest in housing. A lot of people in the African American community not making a lot of money, spending 50% of their income in housing, childcare.
We got to change that. From the smallest things, from car insurance is more expensive in the African American area.
I know that.
Daycare is more expensive a lot of times in the African American area. But a lot of times we can't get loans. Like, they will not give African American, black people, and minorities loans.
We met with some African American small business people in, I think, Las Vegas, Nevada, actually. And that's exactly what they were saying.
And what about HBCUs?
Absolutely.
Very big for our community.
It is.
And
very
support
big.
is very big.
It is very big. They, I don't know the numbers, but as you know, a significant number of African American teachers, academics, professionals come out of the HBCU system, and they do a great job, and they're underfunded. So when I talk about making as I recall, most of the HBCUs are public institutions. Some are not, but we are going to pay a lot of attention to them.
Where do you stand on some form of reparations for black people? Did you see Mayor de Blasio saying the marijuana economy could be a form of reparations? Marianne Williamson says black people should get $100 billion in slavery reparations. Like, where do you stand on it?
Well, look, I think that we have got to address that. Again, it's back to the inequities. Look, America has a history of 200 years of slavery. Mm-hmm. We had Jim Crow. We had legal segregation in America for a very long time. The Voting Rights Act was only strong for 50 years, and then they wiped it out with this United States Supreme Court in the Shelby decision, to the point that 22 states immediately thereafter put in place laws that one court found were crafted with surgical precision to have black people not be able to vote. So we've got to recognize, back to that earlier point, people aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up. And there are a number of ways to do it. Part of my initiative, again, around the LIFT Act is that same point, lifting people up who are making less than $100,000 a year. What I want to do about rent is the same thing. What we need to do around education and understanding disparities, what we need to do around HBCUs. But we have a history of racism in America.
So you are for some type of
Yes, I am.
reparation? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Now, why does it seem like this week you've been kind of dodging the reparations question? Senator Harris and Senator Warren have both kind of spoken out and said that they agree with some form of reparations.
Well, what the question is, I'm not dodging the question. The question is, what do we mean by reparations? I mean, it seems to me a lot of people mean a lot of different things. To my mind, it means that we have to deal with the fact that there is enormous disparity between the black community and the white community, and that issue has got to be addressed. And I've indicated to you some of the ways that I think it should be addressed.
Well, I think they mean some type of economic empowerment to the African descendants of slaves.
But what does that mean, economic empowerment? I just talked about the fact that I would do my best to change the banking system to make sure that we end racism, that we pay attention to distressed communities, that people get the loans they need to make the investments they need.
What about straight cash payouts?
No.
How much you want,
You
Charlamagne?
agree with that? Why don't you agree with that?
Well, first of all, you mean just a check to every African American?
Yes.
Well, then there's a check to every Native American who were nearly wiped out when the settlers first came here. I think the way we go forward is to build America together. There are distressed communities, white communities, there are distressed Latino communities. Right now, what you have is a government owned and controlled by big money interests who worries about Wall Street and the drug companies. We're going to change that. And we're going to pay attention to the needs of working families and low-income families in this country in a way that you have never seen.
But this government has also systemically oppressed us in a way that they haven't oppressed other communities. Through slavery, through segregation, now mass incarceration. And I think it should be something done specifically for African Americans.
Well, and all of those issues, all right, we are going to deal with mass incarceration. And we're going to invest, I think at the end of the day, if we end the discrimination that exists in financial services, in healthcare, in education, if we guarantee health care to all people, if we, and we're working on a particular program, make sure that every person in this country has a job, because there's enough work to be done dealing with climate change, dealing with our crumbling infrastructure, I would suggest to you that not only the African American community, but every community will be a hell of a lot better off than they are today.
Do you think Democrats really believe in reparations for African Americans, or is it just a good talking point for this campaign cycle?
I don't want to speak for other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what worries me and bothers me? Well, scares me, I should say. When I seen Bernie and Hillary running, people rolled for Bernie so much that when she actually won, they turned their back and they did not want to have anything to do with Hillary, which was part of the reason why I felt like she lost. Do you have that fear, or is there a game plan for that? Because there's so many people running. There's going to be people that's going to be gun-ho with Cory Booker and gun-ho with you and gun-ho with whoever runs, whoever else runs. Is that some type of, I guess, strategy to make sure that if one of those people don't make it and you make it, that those people ride with you? Because if they don't, it's going to be like kind of divided so much that we have 45 again?
It is my hope and prayer that we do not divide and hit each other when we have a common purpose and a common goal. When I first made the decision to run, I actually called a number of my colleagues who had either announced or I knew were thinking about announcing, to make just that point and to reach out to them. I have a great deal of respect for the folks who have decided to run, and I know there are others who are seriously thinking about it who I also respect. I would hope that we understand that there is so much at stake right now. Mm-hmm. We are at an inflection point in the history of our country. And to your point about the 2016 election, we would be at an inflection point even if he hadn't been elected. The world is changing. You can look, economies are rising and falling in different countries. You see populations shifting. We're certainly not talking enough about climate change and what that is going to do in a very short matter of time for that new baby, mm-hmm. in terms of what world our children are going to live in and our grandchildren are going to live. So there's so much that's happening. Mm-hmm. And this is a moment that's actually, I find very exciting to think about. What is our plan for what will be America's standing in the world given so much change that is happening? Mm-hmm. And so at least I'll speak for myself. Right. That's the prize my eye is on, which is to look at where we need to be, unburdened by where we have been. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about a vision of America in which everyone can see themselves. And, I'll leave it to my campaign folks to deal with, the stuff that's in the side mirror.
What about legalizing marijuana? And how can we ensure that African Americans get in on, because it seems like we're getting kind of blocked out in many ways.
That's a very good question. The answer is...
Yeah, they're saying you need a lot of assets, you need a lot of liquid to invest in.
Even be able to get a license.
Well, this touches on the issue we have been discussing. Number one,
and we were so affected by these marijuana laws.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so two answers. I believe in the legalization of marijuana. Right now, you have a federal Controlled Substance Act in Washington that says you're caught with heroin, he's caught with marijuana. It's both the same level. That's insane. Okay, so I believe in the legalization of marijuana, which, by the way, will be a major step forward in the struggle for a fairer, a less racist criminal justice system. Number two, your point. There are large corporations, your point, that are going to be making a whole lot of money. Suddenly, 10 years ago, everyone was demonizing marijuana. Mm-hmm. Now these guys are going to make $1 zillion off it. And you're right, small business people in the African-American community deserve to be part of that process.
Have you ever smoked?
A few times.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Didn't do a whole lot for me. My recollection is I nearly coughed my brains out, so it's not my cup of tea.
So you think we should be guaranteed to get a certain percentage of these opportunities?
I don't know what a guarantee looks like, but like in many other areas, your point is well taken, that the corporations are moving in. They're moving in on hemp. Okay? This is a problem that we have above and beyond marijuana, in that area after area in this country, you have a small number of corporations who control the action. But the issue of marijuana is particularly sensitive because you got so many African Americans who have been arrested. If my memory is correct, well, I don't know what it is, but it's been disproportionately African American and Latino.
You have to start remembering things, Senator Sanders, because they're always on you about being too old. So you can't be acting like you're forgetting things all the time.
All right. There's too much to remember.
What do you think of that?
Weren't your parents civil rights activists?
Yeah, they were. They were active. They were. I mean, they were. My mother was actually a breast cancer researcher, but they met when they were active in civil rights movement. Yeah, Maya and I, my sister, we joke we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting.
Yeah, and see, that's what bugs me out about the criticism you receive, because it's like your parents were civil rights activists. You were born in Oakland. Oakland's a black ass town.
Oh yeah.
You went to Howard University. So why do people say things like she's pandering to black people?
They don't know me. And I, listen, I think that also, some folks have a limited vision of who we are as black people. Mm-hmm. And that's on them. That's not on us. People need to be educated about who we are.
It seems like some of it comes from us, though. Like, it's like, oh, she doesn't even identify as a black woman. I've even seen Kamala Dozal memes. I'm like, huh?
What's that?
Yo, Rachel Dozal.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I hope that folks will, at the end of the day, understand that the outcome of this election is going to have a profound impact on the lives of real people. And I hope at the end of the day that people will focus on who is going to have their best interest in mind and work hard to uplift and empower and unite the folks of our country. And that's where people are going to have to, ultimately land. And obviously they can make their decisions based on what they see and what they hear.
What do you think about Howard Schultz running? And do you think that's going to affect the Democrats? Some people think it might be very divisive.
I don't know that we need another billionaire to be running for president. Anyone wants to run, they can run. I think his views are certainly very different than mine. Will he? Your question is, will he split the vote and help elect Trump? Don't know. But what can I say?
I was going to ask about that as well. When you ran last time, a lot of the people that followed you and rode with you to the end. Like they would rather not vote than to vote for Hillary.
Yeah, they weren't going from Bernie to Hillary.
They weren't going from Bernie to Hillary, and that's part of the reason why I think that Donald Trump was in. How do we make sure that regardless of what happens, that the Democratic Party is united?
Good question. So let me say what I think I said a few minutes ago. I'm going to do everything I can to be the Democratic nominee. I think I am the strongest candidate to defeat Trump. I think I can win in states that Secretary Clinton lost: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, etc. What I pledge to you, and what I've said already, is that if I am not the nominee, I will do everything I can, as I did when Secretary Clinton was the candidate. I knocked my brains out. I resent a little bit some of the criticism that comes of me. Yeah. I ran all over this country. I think we did 35 rallies in, 13, 14 states to get her elected. Now, your point is, well, some Bernie supporters did not vote for Hillary. Yeah. True, but that always happens. Think back in 2008 when Obama ran against Clinton in the primary, okay? A far greater number of people who voted for Clinton ended up voting for John McCain, okay, and did not vote for Obama than was the case in my race. So it always happens, that some people are going to flake off. But I did my best to say, we got to do everything we can not to elect this guy, Donald Trump. And getting back to Trump for a moment, I'm thinking back that even before he was president and he was the leader of the anti-birther movement, you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about this. Think about trying to, not only is that racist, what trying to do is delegitimize. That's a big deal. To say, oh, Barack Obama, he's not a real president. Constitutionally, he wasn't born in America. Can you imagine that? And now he's turning his divisiveness against the Latino community, against immigrants. The theme of this campaign is to do exactly the opposite of what Trump has tried to do. He has tried to divide us up by the color of our skin, where we were born, our religion. Our job is to bring our people together around an agenda that works for all of us.
Your truancy program got a lot of criticism, too. Did you actually lock anybody up?
No, we never locked anybody up. That was an initiative that was focused on my belief that education is a fundamental right. My belief that a child going without an education is something that all of us as a community should be highly concerned with, and we should put in place incentives to get children into school every day. Here's the thing that was behind that. I did an analysis of who the homicide victims were who were under the age of 25 when they were killed, and in when I was DA, and over 90% of them are high school dropouts. When I started to look at the statistics, I realized that 82% of the prisoners in the United States are high school dropouts. An African-American man between the age of, I think it's 30 and 34, who is a high school dropout, is 2/3 likely to be in jail, have been in jail, or dead. There is a direct connection between public education and public safety. I looked at the issue of elementary school truancy. An elementary school truant is 2 to 3 times more likely to be a high school dropout. I looked at the issue of third grade reading level, something that we really need to understand. If by the end of third grade, a child is not at third grade reading level, they literally drop off. Because before third grade, a child is learning how to read. Then comprehension kicks in, and they're reading to learn. If they've not learned how to read if they can't read the word Egypt, they will never understand how folks built the pyramids. Right? So I focused on this, understanding that so many of the children in our community are at risk for not going to school every day while they're in elementary school. And it is not a function of that parent's love for the child. It is usually a function of that parent's ability to have the resources they need to take care of what needs to happen on a daily basis. And here's the other thing that I realized in doing this work. You know, there are also, we have certain myths, and we think that, oh, you know, if that child doesn't go to school every day in elementary school, they'll catch up, they'll be fine. They'll, you know, when they get to middle school and high school, they'll go to school every day, without realizing that those first years of education are critically important to everything that comes thereafter. So I created this initiative with the intention of putting a spotlight on it, and frankly, willing to be the bad guy to put a spotlight on it, but with the intention, which was the goal, which was achieved, of then highlighting and uplifting the resources that were available for those parents to get those children to school every day.
So you didn't lock up parents when their kids didn't go to school? I'm just trying to clear up all the BS.
Yeah, no.
Given everything that's happening with everyone around him being investigated, do you think that he could potentially get impeached, and would you like to see that happen?
Well, as a member of the United States Senate, my constitutional responsibility will be to be a judge. That's my job. If the House impeaches and the Senate judges. So, you know, I can't comment on that. I have to listen to the evidence. I think what we will see, presumably pretty quickly, is the Mueller investigation coming to an end. We will find out whether or not there was collusion or whether there are other possible impeachable offenses. But I think, you know, what we saw with this guy, Stephen Cohn, this week, confirming basically everything that all of us know. That Trump is a liar, he is a racist, and he's a fraud. Nothing new.
Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen, I'm sorry. Michael.
What about all these women that come forward and have these allegations against Trump, having harassed them, you know, pull them in, kiss them, and somehow it just gets brushed over? And I'm not understanding why people don't take that seriously.
Well, you know why?
They said there was a young lady that asked the other day about you having harassment claims in your campaign as well, and you said that you were upset about that.
Yep.
So it's kind of the same thing.
Well, no, it's not about me. It's about my campaign, which had 1,200 employees. Mm-hmm. And I am upset. We put together our campaign quite quickly, and there were problems in it. I don't deny it, and I'm embarrassed by that. That ain't going to happen again. We have now instituted, I think, the strongest protocol to protect women or anybody against sexual harassment. But to answer your question, the problem with dealing with Trump is that every day there is another outrage. You know, it's hard to keep track of it. And the media says, my God, look at what we learned yesterday and then today. So I think that's kind of part of the problem.
Don't you think the Democrats focus too much on being anti-Trump, which they should, but instead of actually telling the American people what they plan to do to make the country better?
Yes. Because
I don't think you can win on just the anti-Trump. I'm not just going to vote for you just because you're the anti-Trump.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right. And that's why, you know, you've heard me talk today about an agenda that says if you are billionaires, you ain't going to get any more tax breaks. We're going to demand that you start paying your fair share of tax. Health care is a right. We're going to provide universal child care. We are going to take on the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, that's my agenda. You're right, though. Mm-hmm. You cannot simply be anti-Trump. You got to give the American people a vision of where we want to take this country.
Also, and I know the answer to this, too, they say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
They be so mad at you.
Right. Yeah. No, I do not. No. I have had concerns. The full record. I have had concerns, which I think first of all, let me just make the statement very clear. I believe we need to legalize marijuana. Now, that being said, this is not a but, it is an and we need to research, which is one of the reasons we need to legalize it. We need to move it on the schedule so that we can research the impact of weed on a developing brain. Mm-hmm. You know, that part of the brain that develops judgment actually begins its growth at age 18 through age 24.
The frontal cortex, I think.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right. So we've got to take that seriously. And so I believe that we need to research that because I believe we don't fully know the consequences. The other issue that we've got to address is how we're going to measure impairment when somebody has been smoking weed in terms of driving. These are details that some people may not want to hear about or talk about. But look, I started my work when Mothers Against Drunk Driving were active because so many young people were being killed because of people who were driving under the influence.
Right.
So it's a real issue, and this is my background and this is how I think about things. And that's just a fact. If somebody is driving a car, it can be a lethal weapon in the hands of somebody who is impaired. So that needs to be addressed also. But I am absolutely in favor of legalizing marijuana. We've got to do it. We have incarcerated so many, in particular young men and young men of color, in a way that we have not for the same level of use other young men. Mm-hmm. And we've got to deal with that, in addition to dealing with the fact that not all drugs are the same. And when we're talking about marijuana, look, I have forever been an advocate for medicinal marijuana. I have personally known people who only benefited from its use. So there are a lot of reasons why we need to legalize.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like in
and
college,
I inhaled. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. But yes.
I know you have to go. They say you have to go. I just
broke loose.
I mean, was it in college? See, I like stuff like that. That's a real honest answer.
Real.
Was it a blunt or joint?
It was a joint.
Hey.
Yeah.
You remember the high?
I do.
So if it was legalized all throughout the country and medicinal, would you do it?
Listen, I think that it gives a lot of people joy, and we need more joy.
We need more joy in this world.
When did you decide that you wanted to run again? When did you know you wanted to throw your hat in the ring?
Well, my wife is 10 feet away from me, and she will confirm that this was the most difficult decision we've ever made. And we anguished over it. We really did. I mean, because when you run for office, that especially when you're prepared to take on the big money interest, they're going to go after you. And they are. Already they're going after us. So, we thought about it a whole lot. I'm proud of my state of Vermont. I love representing Vermont. It's a good job. But at the end of the day, with 7 grandchildren, and we ended up concluding that I am the strongest candidate to defeat Trump and to move this country in a very different direction.
Another myth is, I don't know if it's a myth, but they say you took campaign donations from big banks.
No. No, I have not taken from corporations and big banks. I don't believe that I have. No.
Now, I also wanted to know before you have to go.
And in fact, I fought the big banks and fought them, and it was a vicious battle because I held out. When I was Attorney General of California during the mortgage and foreclosure crisis, I would not take the deal that they were giving to other states, and I pulled California out of it because I said it wasn't enough, and we got into a big old battle where the banks really took me on. They were sending leaflets, or at least we believe it came from them, around the country saying, if Kamala Harris doesn't get back in this settlement, then you won't get this or you will get this. It was a high pressure battle that we won. Mm-hmm. But that's my history with the banks.
Now, we know you stand for equality. We know you stand for justice. But some people feel like with this field of Democrats, with all of these women and these black candidates, some people feel like the best thing for you to do would be to move out of the way. What do you think?
Well, obviously I don't. Look, I understand that. Mm-hmm. I understand that. But again, I think that that what we need to do is beat Trump, and I think I am perhaps the strongest candidate to do that. And I would ask people to take a look at what I stand for. Okay? And I think if you look at my life history, it's not only involved in civil rights. It's taken on the drug companies, taking on Wall Street. And I would hope people will look at my record and who I am.
What does Kamala Harris listen to?
What were you listening to when you was high? What was on? What song was it?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, definitely Snoop. Tupac, for sure.
What do you listen to now? What's your favorite hip-hop artist now? What's your favorite artist?
I really love is Cardi B.
You like Cardi B?
I really do.
Okay.
I really do. Everybody gets really just jokes. Sometimes I just turn on "Be Careful of Me."
Mm-hmm. That's your favorite.
Well, it's one of them. I think she's so fantastic. But there's so many.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, my favorite movie.
You and the hubby, long day, sit back, Have a little wine. What do you put on?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's so many. Recently, I was Beale Street is a beautiful movie. Mm-hmm. That's probably my most favorite.
What's your favorite place to go to relax? When this is over, you say, I'm gonna take a couple days and go here. Where's that?
My kitchen and start cooking.
The kitchen. What's your favorite meal to cook?
Curry goat.
Yeah, man.
Jerk chicken.
Yeah, man. them gonna push and bring me back a goat and I cook it up.
What's your favorite meal to cook?
It ranges. I make a really mean bolognese. I cook it for about 4 hours. Bolognese. It's like it's an Italian meat sauce.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. No, and then I do it with like pork and veal and beef.
I do. Pork still?
Yeah, I eat the pig.
Jesus Christ. Sometimes. That might do it for me. I don't know if I can.
Ain't nothing wrong with no bacon.
You know, that's what I'm saying. Bacon, I call bacon a spice.
Yes.
Bacon is a spice.
Absolutely.
A bunch of things. I make the best greens you've ever had.
Okay.
I have friends who have asked me to make my greens for their Christmas parties.
Van Jones said that he feels like black people are going to be what determines the next president. So when we talk about like your record with black people, what examples can you point at to show black people this is what I have done specifically for issues that deal with y'all?
Good question. Okay. I don't talk about this very often, but when I was a student in college, I was a member of a group that no longer, I think, exists, Congress on Racial Equality, CORE. Ring a bell? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was one of the prominent civil rights groups in the early '60s, and we took on segregated housing owned by the University of Chicago. We held the first sit-in demonstration ever held in the North. Okay, I got arrested for doing that. Okay, in 1963. This does speak to my age, I guess. I was at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Dr. King spoke. Okay, so I think I have a long history in civil rights activism. In 1988, I was one of the few white public officials who supported Jesse Jackson for President of the United States, and he ended up winning Vermont. Mm-hmm. I think if you look at my record in terms of civil rights and other areas, you will find that it is consistently a very, very strong record.
Any legislation we can point to?
Well, legislation that benefits African Americans, we pass, but not specifically. We passed legislation that benefits working people. Sure.
I make the best greens you've ever had.
Okay.
I have friends who have asked me to make my greens for their Christmas parties.
Now I'm gonna hold you to that. I'm gonna tell you why, because they're gonna turn that into a soundbite, and they're gonna say that's one of them times you pandering to black people, but she's black.
No, but I'm black.
Yes.
And I'm proud of being black.
Absolutely.
And I was born black. I will die black. And I'm proud of being black. And I'm not going to make any excuses for anybody because they don't understand.
And we want to taste the greens. We want them with turkey, not ham hocks.
Ain't nothing wrong with no ham hock.
Well, I do it with bacon.
Ain't nothing wrong with no bacon.
It's a spice. You know what I mean? It's a spice.
I've been off pork.
You know what? Okay, well, let me tell you another thing that I do. And do you cook at all?
No, a little bit. Not really.
Not a little bit. I do breakfast.
Okay, all right.
Men do breakfast.
Yeah, right, exactly. My husband does breakfast.
Almond milk.
But there's this, I do this also, this feta chicken, where I brine a whole chicken in feta, the juice from feta, and then I roast it with lemon and oregano and garlic. Anyway, it's really good. I'll give you the recipe next time. But I have a few recipes.
If you had to pick a person of color to be your running mate, who would it be?
Too early to say.
Too early?
Yeah. Much too early. But as I mentioned, we're going to have a very diverse campaign staff and a very diverse cabinet.
I want to give you a chance to clear this up because this is a headline. The headline says you hired an illegal immigrant.
Where was this headline?
Secretary. It was on Washington. I think I said it was Washington Examiner. I saw it.
Well,
yeah, it came out like 15 hours ago.
It was his deputy national press secretary, but she's an undocumented, I guess she's an illegal immigrant, but she's protected by DACA. So right now she's here protected by that, but I guess...
So why is...
You look like it's the first time you're hearing about this.
Well, look, stick with me. Every day, every minute, there's going to be something else coming out. Yeah. I honestly don't know anything about it. But we have people, certainly, I have somebody in my office who I think is in the DACA program. Mm-hmm. These are people who are raised in this country. They spent their entire life in this country, and we have got to provide them with legal status.
I think she came from Argentina, I believe, when she was like 7. And now she's protected because of DACA. She's a dreamer.
Right.
So, if that's supposed to be a criticism of me, well, I don't take it as a criticism. I support the DACA young people, and in fact, we got to fight as hard as we can to get legal status for them.
Yeah, hopefully her speaking out will help people understand that might have prejudices against that, the importance of protecting the dreamers who are in our country.
I know this is not the last time you're going to be here, but I do want to ask you this before you leave, because I see this online all the time, and I don't think it's fair. I don't even think the personal life should matter, but they do mention your husband a lot. And they say, how is she so black, but she married white?
Look, I love my husband, and he happened to be the one that I chose to marry because I love him, and that was that moment in time, and that's it.
Word.
That's it. That's it. And he loves me.
Word. Absolutely.
That's all that matters.
That's right.
All right.
Why do you think you ran into so many issues in the South in 2016?
Look, again, let's go back. I started off this campaign. You know what I was in 2016? You know what number I was in the polls when we started? I was at 3%. All right. And we ended up winning a strong majority of young people, black and white and Latino and Asian American and Native American. We went a long way. But when you start a campaign and nobody knows who you are, especially in the African American community, I'm from Vermont. Who knew me in South Carolina? But as the campaign progressed, I think we did stronger and stronger.
Well, thank you for joining us. We
Okay.
appreciate you.
And please
Thank
make
you.
this your second home when you come to New York.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
Because you're talking
Yes.
directly to the people
Yeah.
that have
Yeah.
questions, and there's going to be more questions as the campaign continues.
we need to address them.
Yes.
We need to address them.
Because when we come to Cali, we coming to get some bacon.
And some greens.
I know that's right. I can do vegetarian, but you're not vegetarian. You just don't eat pork.
I might be by the time the 2020 election come around. I'm leaning there.
Vegetarian?
Yeah.
I can do a lot of vegetarian too, because there are so many ways you can get protein without eating meat.
Yes.
And we have to remember, like garbanzo beans and kale has a lot of protein. Yogurt has a lot of protein. I have a few good
Don't try to
recipes for
distract
you.
me from them greens. We gonna find out if them greens popping or not.
Yeah, but I make them with bacon. I'm telling you. Okay, I'll got them for you.
What's the most painful part of campaigning? Because I feel like they dig up
Probably
everything.
taking these questions.
Well, above and beyond you guys. You mean to tell me?
Yeah.
Look, I'll tell you just did it right now. You just, not that you did it. Every day, they're attacking my wife.
Yeah.
All right, you like to run for office and find the lying about your wife? Or your kids? Or every day there's somebody else? Look, they can't debate on the issues. They can't defend the fact that we have massive income and wealth inequality, or we have racism or sexism. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to rip you apart. And is that painful? Yeah, it's painful. And it's when you asked me, you asked me about running for office. Was it a difficult decision? When did we decide? Yeah, that's one of the things you consider. How would you like that? And it's not just me. It's like a game. You go out there and you run. Oh, okay. You know what opposition research? You got an industry in Washington, D.C. who will go through every bloody thing that happened in your life. And they'll
Digging
lie.
up dirt, yeah.
They'll dig up dirt and they'll lie. And is that fun? No, it's not.
And sometimes it's your own colleagues too, because they're also running for office, and it's very crowded right now. People who are throwing their hat in the ring, and that means people that you have worked with and consider to be friends. They might have to say negative things about you.
Well, listen, I hope, and that's an important point. I would hope that certainly on the Democratic side, because I know, I don't know all of them, but I know certainly the senators. Somebody called Elizabeth Warren has been a personal friend of mine for 20 years. Cory Booker's office is literally down the hallway from mine in the Dirksen office building. So, you know these guys for a long period of time. And I would hope that we will focus on the issues and not get into that kind of ugly personal attack.
And where can we donate to your campaign? Because I know you raised $1.5 million in 24 hours. I'm sure that number's gone up.
Yes, it has. And it's and the thing that I'm really proud of is at an average of $37 a contributor.
Wow.
KamalaHarris.org. KamalaHarris.org. Thank you.
Well, it's Bernie Sanders. We appreciate you for stopping
Yes,
by.
sir.
Hey, I
Hopefully
enjoyed
we'll
it.
see you
And
again.
give me your campaign website so if they can donate. You already raised $6 million in 24 hours.
Actually, $10 million in a week. But who's counting? But it's BernieSanders.com. And more, look, the money is important. More important is the grassroots activism we need. So people want to volunteer. You don't have to contribute. If If you want to contribute, that's great.
And Howard is heavy supporting, right?
It's been so wonderful.
Just making sure.
Well, you know, and
Hampton has your back. I just want to make sure.
And I feel that.
Okay.
And I feel that. Right after we announced, I went right back to D.C. and I did my big press conference of the announcement on Howard's campus.
Thank you for that charity.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
It was real, and but let me just tell you, and it was so wonderful because there was all this press and even international press, and standing there right next to me was the president of Howard University's student council.
Wow.
This brother Amos, who was just brilliant, his vice president, a young woman, standing right there for all the world to see, right? That there is so much leadership and it's emerging and it's happening. So it was a really wonderful time.
Now, what about when Donald Trump goes at you and, he's a nasty individual?
Calls you crazy, Bernie.
Are you ready to go?
You remind him of Doc Brown off Back to the Future.
Now, did he say that? Or did you make that up? You made that up. See, I knew
What, you writing his speeches for him?
I knew you made that up.
Don't give him an idea, man.
I knew you made that up. Are you ready to go? Are you going to get back nasty at him? Because, he needs a pop on the hand.
Let's see. We began the program by saying that he is a pathological liar, a fraud, an authoritarian, a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot.
We need some more.
He's a racist, a con man, and a cheat.
And those are all the compliments.
Those are the compliments. Those are the good things.
Yeah, then we got some bad things to say about it. But, let me get back to on the serious note about Trump. Here's a guy who tried to throw 32 million people off of health care. There's a guy whose budget called for massive cuts in Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. But you know what the ugliest thing about this guy is about? This is the ugliest thing. And this is really unprecedented in my lifetime.
His toupee.
His tan skin, I don't know. His orange skin.
Well, above and beyond the orange hair. Okay. Yeah, you even take conservative Republicans, like, Bush and his father. Right? These guys did not spend their lives trying to divide the American people up. They were not progressives by any means. But that you go around, what most presidents understand, we have one country, right? Bring people together. You got to have disagreements on healthcare, the economy, the environment, climate change, fine. But you don't go out of your way trying to split this country up. That's disgusting. And that is what he is doing.
He's basically just trying to tell you Hampton could never.
No, Hampton's good.
I'm taking my daughter there next month. We're going to go Howard, we're going to go Hampton, and then we're going to go Spelman. So we're going to go to those three so she could really experience.
That's good.
We're going to go to those three.
That's good.
So hopefully she goes to Hampton, but we never know.
You never know. Well, she can transfer.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning. Well, Bernie got to go, guys.
Yeah, this is my final question, because I want him to clear this up, because it's a headline. Have you ever gotten a massage at the Orchards of Asia Day Spa in Florida?
That is not a headline.
The answer is no.
Okay.
All right, you clear on that one?
Yeah, I'm just clear.
They said they have some video of you and Roger
You jumped out with
together.
Robert Kraft and a Maybach. I don't know how true that is. Yeah.
No?
No.
Just not.
Unequivocally, no.
His wife said no.
Hell no.
And since you asked that, what about legalizing? Because we saw Kamala Harris talking about that, but sex workers.
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for it. I see two sides to that.
All right. Bernie Sanders
Feel
is
the
the
burn.
Breakfast Club. Good morning.